Hello, everyone. Very warm welcome to you. My name is Dawn Evans. I am the coordinator of the Access Text Network. If you haven't heard of it, please check out accesstext.org, especially for you disability service providers. So I am your guest host for today's webinar, Creating and Editing Accessible EPUB. All right, let's get started. So in the last DAISY webinar, we heard about testing EPUB for validation and conformance, assessing if the EPUB is well-formed to the standard, and if it conforms to the EPUB accessibility specification. But what's the best method of producing EPUB content to give it the best chance of passing these tests? And what do you do if the tests don't pass? So in today's webinar, our experts will explore the options and processes to guide you on a path to creating accessible EPUB. We have lots to cover, so I'll hand over to our panel and ask them to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Amit Verma. I do trainings on InDesign to EPUB. Also cover creating accessible EPUB using InDesign. I'm also a professional software developer.
Hello, I'm Marianne Gulster, and I'm delighted to be here today. I work at Publison with EPUB quality assurance, and my job is to keep up with standards, fixing invalid ebooks, and help publishers create better books. I've been working with book design for 20 plus years now, and I still enjoy every day of it.
Hello everyone, my name is Richard Orme. I'm proud to work at the DAISY Consortium, which is the international non-profit organization all around accessible publishing and reading. So what are we going to cover in today's session? We're going to explore some different workflow options for producing accessible EPUB. Amit will take us through using Adobe InDesign, and then I'll walk through some workflows using online services from Pressbooks and Headeris, and then also talk about producing EPUB directly from your word processor, and we'll talk about Google Docs, Apple Pages, and Word. And then Marianne will talk to us about editing EPUB to improve accessibility and also checking EPUB. And then at the end, I hope you'll have lots of lovely questions for the panel. So over to Amit to talk about producing accessible EPUB through Adobe InDesign.
Thanks, Richard. We have divided this presentation in 4 sections. In the first section, we will learn when to and why to use InDesign to produce EPUB when there are so many easier options available to produce EPUB. Then we will see how we can use accessibility features from InDesign to produce EPUB. Then we have a introduction to circular software, and then there are a few useful resources for our audiences. All right, so there's a question, why should we use InDesign to produce EPUB? A lot of people think that InDesign is a complicated software. So there's a specific reason why should we use InDesign to produce EPUB. This is very good tool to generate your digital publication at the same time that you are also producing print publication. So if you are using InDesign in your book production workflow, this is the right tool to use to produce print and digital publications at the same time. After producing EPUB from InDesign, there are a few modifications you can also do using the editing tricks Marianne will share with you at the end of this presentation. There are also a lot of tools available in the market and the InDesign scripts which you can use to automate certain tasks. So there are a few building blocks to produce a better EPUB. We generally hear that InDesign does not produce a good EPUB or a EPUB with good semantics. For example, it does not produce a good HTML files within EPUB file. But to produce a good EPUB file, we need to follow certain steps. For example, we need to define styles properly when we are creating our InDesign book. You generally, designers, they use manual styling, which is very bad for creating, for exporting EPUB or HTML or even PDF files. It is very vital to use proper paragraph styles, character styles, and object styles. Then after, generally, designers do not include images within their story flow or the text frame flow, because of which images are not placed at the correct places, and their alt text are not included within the images. We'll see how we can anchor the images within the text, and we can add alt text to the images. Then we can also see there are different ways of defining the content order within InDesign. There are two ways to do that. One is layout order using stories, and another one is article panel. Article panel is useful when we have more complicated structure or design in InDesign document. Generating a well-defined TOC is one of the strengths of InDesign. In fact, we can produce a separate TOC using TOC styles for digital publication without disturbing our print book table of contents. It's also easier to include a separate TOC page within EPUB. It is also vital to map our paragraph styles and character styles with correct HTML export tags. These HTML export tags include the heading text, for example, H1, H2, H3, and definitely the character styles like bold and italics. So the current screen shows us how can we anchor an image within the text. We can drag the blue marker given on the image frame within the correct position within the text. So when we will export from InDesign into EPUB, this will appear at the correct location. Using anchored export options, we can also define the alignment of the image. We can keep it as left, center, right aligned. In fact, we can also create a floating image within EPUB using InDesign. So defining alt text is quite easy within InDesign. We just need to create, we need to go to the context menu of the image frame, select object export options, and there we can use alt text. There are different methods of defining alt text using custom alt text, or we can also import alt text if we are using XML as a content base. We can also see within this slide in the bottom that how the alt text is exported in EPUB. The next step is to create table of content. So we can see that here we have separate TOC style defined just for the EPUB. We don't really have to include this for our print publication. However, we can still use the style while exporting the EPUB. We can have more complex table of content just for EPUBs, so that you can include as much as marker within the text as you want, which we really can't include in print publication as well. So here we have displayed how we can map paragraph styles to a related HTML tag. So this defines a structure for the content within EPUB, which is very vital for accessibility, to jump from one section to another section. We can also define where should we split our EPUB so that we can have proper page breaks and chapter breaks within EPUB. Circular software is a plugin within InDesign which makes it quite easy to produce EPUB file from InDesign. Richard has conducted an interview with Ken from Circular Software.
So I'm now joined by Ken Jones, founder and director of Circular Software. And Ken, I think you've made an announcement this week.
Yes, this week we're announcing the work we've been doing for nearly 2 years, really, looking at how InDesign's exports for EPUB are lacking a little bit and how we can extend them, improve them and fix some of the things within there. So really looking at accessibility and exporting properly accessible EPUBs from InDesign.
Sounds intriguing, Ken. So tell us a little bit more and tell us what kind of problems your software solves.
Okay, we've had software for 10 years called Circular Flow and Greenlight. So I've come to the conclusion that we can actually merge both of those tools. So Greenlight will be doing the checking and helping InDesign users find where they could improve the files. Before then, we use Circular Flow to export more accessible output. So we are adding page lists, ARIA roles, extended image descriptions, adding accessibility metadata, fixing a bit of the structure of code and making it more compliant, and also sort of reducing the bloat and the complex code, which also can have accessibility issues. So all of those things aren't done from InDesign, and we're providing the tools for InDesign users to do that from within InDesign. So no code accessibility for InDesign is the sort of banner that we're touting it as.
So by saying no code, I guess that gives us a bit of a pointer to the kinds of users that you think would be taking up this tool.
Yes, all our software is squarely aimed at InDesign users. And if you can allow an InDesign user who knows the program to create better output by adding extra functionality to their InDesign document export from InDesign, that's, I believe, the right thing to do. So we shouldn't be asking designers or editors to be opening up files and dealing with code.
Sounds great. So you made the announcement this week. So could you tell us, please, how much does it cost?
Well, for the next 6 months, Greenlight accessibility tools are completely free. We're committed to making them free beyond that for small publishers, self-publishers. We're allowing people to make a dozen reflowable, accessible EPUBs free of charge to really try it out. And beyond that, we offer self-publishers and small publishers 50% discount, and it's beyond that $99 per EPUB export.
And where do people get a hold of it, please?
Circularsoftware.com, and there's more information at circularsoftware.com/A11Y.
Perfect. Thanks for joining us today, Ken.
We have also gathered a few useful resources which you will find on daisy.org, Daisy's website. So we have listed the EPUB support within InDesign and its features. We have a link for Circular Software, that latest plugin which is coming out soon, and few useful EPUB InDesign script, which will be really helpful to produce accessible EPUB. Thank you very much. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Amit. You made it sound so easy, and maybe even easier with the tool from Circular Software. And as you mentioned, often we give links to various resources where you can go and find out more things and download them. To save our webinar attendees having to scribble those down, you can grab a document with all those links in at daisy.org/WR for webinar resources. And we'll also be posting all of these links on the webinar page in the next few days. Okay, so we said we'd cover some different options for producing accessible EPUB. And next we'll talk about web-based services. And we'll explore Pressbooks and Headeris. So first, Pressbooks. Pressbooks initially started in 2011 as a platform for self-publishing authors, and now they work more with universities on academic and textbook publishing, also open educational resources. Pressbooks is used at institutions including UC Berkeley, Indiana, and Kansas universities. But as an individual, you can use Pressbooks to create your own EPUB, and you get lots of functionality with a free account. And only when you decide to press the button and publish your title, then it's $20 for a single publication, for which you get an EPUB and a webbook. And if you pitch in $100, then you'll also get PDF export, which is said to be PDF UA compliant, although I didn't test this. The Pressbooks workflow is based on WordPress, modified to reflect the task of authoring books. So you could write your entire book in there, or you can draft your manuscript in a word processor and then import it into Pressbooks. So as a fun fact, Pressbooks is the creation by the guy who created the LibriVox service. Okay, well, let's look at the accessibility support. Well, in the user guide, there's a section titled Make Your Book Accessible and Inclusive, with high-level information and links to some other nice guides and a checklist and a link to the DAISY Consortium Accessible Publishing Knowledge Base. I found the accessibility support in the EPUB that was produced by Pressbooks to be pretty good. In terms of navigation, well, you're authoring in an HTML environment. So as expected, the heading levels were all preserved. A table of contents is generated for you. Internal and external links and to and from footnotes, all good. Pressbooks doesn't generate a page list for EPUB, though. Let's look at alt text. So image alt text, all good. And there's information in the supplementary guidance about adding extended descriptions. If you don't supply alt text, then the image is assumed to be decorative, which is an approach that I'm not a great fan of. It's easy to include tables, although I needed to manually add the code for header rows and columns. And I also had to add the relevant HTML when I was adding a phrase or paragraph in a different language. This is to ensure that it's spoken with the right voice with read aloud or shown correctly on a braille display. Adding math expressions on Pressbooks, well, that's supported. And again, there's information in the linked guidance about how to include these. My resulting EPUB was valid and works well in reading apps and with a screen reader. But to finish the job, I would want to add accessibility metadata after export by using the Ace by DAISY app or using a tool such as Sigil, which Marianne will be showing us. Okay, the second service I looked at was Headeris, who produce cloud-based collaborative book production tools. And with Headeris, you can produce EPUB, PDF, and print-ready files. You can pay per project, so a single project is $119, or you can reduce the cost per project by purchasing a project bundle. Now, for my evaluation, I took advantage of the first project being completely free. The workflow is to upload your Word document and then use the step-by-step browser interface to manage your production. This guides you through the design and export of your publication. If you want to keep working on the manuscript, then you can download it as a Word document again, and it adds various codes and styles so that the formatting you've already done in Headeris is retained, and then you upload the Word document again. So there's a screenshot here showing me one of the edit modes in Headeris, and there's a second screenshot that shows me the step-by-step guide. Okay, well, let's look at the accessibility support. I found the user guides to be comprehensive, and there was plenty of information there to guide you towards producing an accessible publication. There's also a page on their website with information about the accessibility features. As expected, the heading levels were all preserved, internal and external links and to and from footnotes, all good, and ARIA roles were applied in all the right places. A table of contents is generated for you, or you can manually create one in the Word document if you want more control. Headeris earns extra kudos for generating a page list so that someone who's using the EPUB can go to exactly the same place as someone who's using the print or PDF version of the title. Yay! You can apply alt text to images, and you can mark images as purely decorative also. I couldn't immediately find a way to include a table or to include math content, so more investigation is required if you need these. Finally, Headeris adds accessibility metadata, so a big thumbs up for that. And when checked with Ace by DAISY, I got 0 errors, and the EPUB looks great and works well in reading apps with a screen reader. There are many other cloud-based solutions for creating digital books. We've just explored these for this session. I want to especially mention Fulcrum, which is an open source platform with a full range of supporting services coming out of the University of Michigan in the US. Fulcrum is aimed at the academic field and extends beyond the conventional parameters of ebooks to encompass digital content such as video and 3D visualizations. I've not had the opportunity to try out Fulcrum's production workflow, but I like the accessibility of the titles that come out from it, and I often pick those when evaluating reading apps and conducting demonstrations. If you've used Fulcrum or other online platforms for digital book production and can share information about how they support accessibility, it would be great to hear from you. Right, let's turn to our third kind of technique for producing accessible EPUB, and this is direct from your word processor. And we're going to talk about Google Docs, Apple Pages, and Microsoft Word. So Google Docs is up first. So Google Docs, because you use it through the browser, it's available on any operating system. And with all of these word processor-based solutions, you start with a well-structured document. Google Docs doesn't have an accessibility checker built in, but you can use a tool called Grackle Docs as an accessibility checker, and that will help you on that way. So how would you produce an EPUB? You go to File, then Download, and then EPUB Publication. So what kind of EPUBs do you get out of Google Docs? Well, you get what I refer to as nearly valid EPUB. You get a multi-level table of contents. You get image descriptions, the semantic markup of headings, proper markup of lists, tables, internal and external links and endnotes. So they're all kind of okay. Missing is the ability to mark images as decorative. You don't get page navigation. You don't get math. You can't in a Google Doc have more than one language kind of indicated. So if you have a change of language, as I described earlier, that's not covered. And there's no support for you adding accessibility metadata. You'd have to do that afterwards. However, with the conversions that I and others have tried, we find that a lot of the content has the text size and the font kind of hard coded in the EPUB. And this means that when you bring it into an EPUB reader, whether that's Google Books or any of the other wonderful EPUB readers that exist, and you want to be able to change and customize and personalize the visual side of things, then you're really limited because some of the text just doesn't change. The font is fixed and the text size is fixed. So this limits the personalization. And I kind of think that means that EPUB straight out of Google Docs is not really fit for purpose, at least in terms of accessibility. Okay, let's look at Apple Pages. Apple Pages is, of course, available on macOS and iOS. I did my evaluations and use it on macOS. You start with a well-structured document. There isn't an accessibility checker to help you with that, so you just have to learn and follow the discipline of producing a well-structured document. Then to create your EPUB, you would go File, Export to EPUB. Then what you get is a little dialog with some options in there. So here you get to choose the title, you can set the author, you can apply a cover image, and importantly, you must choose your layout option as reflowable, and that will get you reflowable EPUB 3. You can define the language for your publication, and then after quickly producing your EPUB, it will give you a messages if there are any warnings. So in this case, it converted my footnotes to endnotes, some style settings weren't supported, and in this case, neither header and footers, these aren't included in the resulting EPUB. So what do we find out about the accessibility properties of the EPUB that was created? Well, typically we get valid EPUB with a multi-level table of contents. You get image descriptions, you get the proper markup of headings, lists, tables, the links within and outside of your publication and endnotes. And the alt text that you've added in your Pages document, that survives, but undescribed images, they have alt equals image applied to them. Similarly, if you've got math in your Pages document, you by default get alt equals equation. So in terms of a kind of solution, you get a lot with Apple Pages. It's pretty clean and neat, but you don't have the option to mark images as decorative. You don't get page navigation. You don't get multiple language support, and you don't get the accessibility metadata. Last up is producing accessible EPUB out of Word using Word to EPUB. So you start with a well-structured document. You use Word's built-in accessibility checker, and then using Word to EPUB that just sits on the ribbon, you can click Word to EPUB and then click OK. There are plenty of other options though. If you click on the Advanced button, this gives you the opportunity to edit the metadata, including accessibility metadata, to select or even design your own cover image, to have other options about the EPUB export, such as where the heading, the chapters break and that kind of thing. You can define how page numbers are derived. You can control some of the styling. You can check your heading structure, and you can even choose to export your document as an HTML. So what about the EPUB you get from this tool? Well, it's a valid EPUB with multi-level table of contents. You have image descriptions, headings, tables, lists, endnotes, math. You get your page navigation, your proper language markup, and you get accessibility metadata. And there are other features in there too, if you really want to knock yourself out. So you can add extended descriptions, you can have audio and video, you can choose specialist fonts for low vision or for folk with dyslexia, if that's your thing. You can also integrate into the tool other tools that help you on your way as a production workflow. So you can build in Sigil, EPUBCheck, Ace, By DAISY and Thorium, and Word to EPUB will help you grab those tools if you don't have them. And they form then part of the click-through interface as a kind of quality assurance workflow. The other thing maybe to mention is that you can use Word to EPUB to convert documents to great EPUB from Google Docs and from LibreOffice Writer. And if you want some of those other features that are missing from Pages, you can convert Pages documents to EPUB. But Word to EPUB is just on Windows. So if you're a Mac user, you're out of luck. Okay, so we've heard from Amit talking about using InDesign to create EPUB, and we heard from Ken too about that offer there. We've looked at using some of these cloud-based services for producing EPUB, and I was pleased with the results we were able to get through just looking at those two. And then we've explored producing EPUB directly from your word processor. So we've tried to present to you different sorts of workflows that might suit different use cases. And of course, you may not have a choice over which workflow you use if you have a particular approach used in your institution. But what then if you want to go further and there is more to do for you once you've got those exports? Well, at this point, let's hand over to Marianne, who will tell us about editing EPUBs to improve accessibility. Marianne.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Yeah, what do you do if you need to edit an EPUB file? Well, there's basically two ways you can do this. You can unzip the EPUB container with a package tool, use a web editor and edit the text, and then rezip the files and folders. Or you could make life easier for yourself and use an EPUB editor. There are some free editors out there that open, edit, and save the EPUB format for you. Sigil can be used, or Libre can also be used, although it is not a fully EPUB editor as Sigil. Some paid editors are Oxygen, Scrivener, Utor, and Blue Griffon. Let's take a closer look at the Sigil editor. Here you see the interface. In the middle, you have the code view window. Here you will do most of your editing. And to the left is the book browser window with all the files and folders that make up the EPUB publication. And to the right, you see the preview of the chosen file. In top, we have all the buttons that make things happen. And we have a find replace functionality in the button. And you can really do a lot of things with this editor. It can import HTML and plain text as well as EPUB. And you can build an entire EPUB publication here, whether you're a beginner or an advanced user. You can import images, video, and audio, and also build complex books, but you had to know what to do. Sigil runs on Windows and Mac, and it will run on Linux too. But if you are a Mac user, you should install some extra software in the beginning. It is open source. Yeah, so let me give you some starter tips. When you go to the Sigil website, I recommend you download the Sigil user guide. It will get you started with the basics. And if you prefer editing in a code-free environment, you might want to download PageEdit. It works closely with Sigil and is a xhtml editor. And the official support site for Sigil is called Mobileread. It's a forum. And here you will find a huge index of plugins. Plugins will expand the functionality of the application. There are more than 70 plugins at the moment for validation, automation, and accessibility. They will help you create books faster and safer. Newcomers are 3 readers that will let you view your ebook without having to leave Sigil. Please read carefully what a plugin does before installing and running it. Take backups. And the last word before leaving, before running Sigil, I think you should go to Preferences and set EPUB version 3 because you want to create EPUB 3 as the default format for your new EPUB files. And it has a functionality called Mend Not Well-Formed HTML source code on opening or save. If you want full control, you should leave these boxes empty. But if you're a newbie, you might want to check open because then Sigil will fix poor files, bad codings for you. Yeah, now you want to see Sigil in action? Good, we have prepared some videos for you. And let me tell you, this is not a comprehensive tutorial for creating an accessible book, not at all. It's a starting point. These are some examples of what Sigil can do. So we will show you a video about adding cover and creating a table of contents, which is very important to have in an EPUB. We'll show you how to add semantics called EPUB type. This is for readers. It doesn't convey any proper markup for screen readers, but it can be used as a way to add area later on. Then we will see how to add some metadata, and there's a plugin called Access-Aide, which will help you when you create the image description, and it will take all the EPUB type semantics and add the area roles, and add some metadata, accessibility metadata. And last, EPUBCheck. Always end your sessions with EPUBCheck. And yeah, Richard, hit the button. So first, we add a cover image to the image folder and choose the image, add cover, and choose the cover image. That's it. Now we hurry on to create the table of contents, generate table of contents, and I usually select all heading entries. Now we have it here down in the bottom. You can click on an entry and it will take you straight to the text. If you want to edit something, you can just hit edit table of contents. And you can type directly here, and we can add a new entry. Let's add the cover and select the target. And we can even delete entry points. And Sigil updates immediately. Yeah, that took 1 minute, right? So the next slide about adding semantics. Let's see how you can add semantics to those parts of the book that are not included in the table of contents. Doing so is helpful for screen reader users. We click on the image right on the xhtml page, and you can see you can add semantics to the color font page, the cover, to the body matter, whatever you like. And Sigil will add this for you. And where does all this markup goes? Down here in the bottom, under the table of contents, there's a list of landmarks. Yeah. These are useful for screen readers, as I said. So we can add metadata to Sigil. Sigil has a metadata editor. Usually we have title, creator, publisher, and language. It has already been added by the author software. But let's add the ebook ISBN number of this title. See, there's lots of extra metadata you can add, and you can just type in here. So where does it go? It all goes down to the OPF file. Here, the top is metadata. We have here we have inserted the ISBN number, and I have a word about language. We have the first language in this list is called the global language of the book. Always check that this one is correct. If your text have multiple languages, you will have multiple language codes listed here. I know that the moment Sigil has a bug, so it adds Arabic tag to the content. So you better check that your language code is correct here. So we noticed that there were no accessibility metadata. let me show the solution for this. It's okay, Richard. We will run a plugin called Access-Aide that will add some image descriptions and also the mandatory accessibility metadata. First, I want to add an image of my old cat. Okay, he's huge, so let me add some style sheet. Let's scale him down to 30% of the width of the screen. I have prepared my style sheet for this. And let us add another image here. This one is purely decorative, so you can see Sigil adds the file name. I will just add this, shrink it down here. Sigil adds the file name as alt text. Now let's run Access-Aide plugin. It will bring up a window with all our images and all the alt text. Here is the cat. Pause, Richard. Here is the cat, because with an alt text, we have to change this alt text to make sense, to be a proper text that will be read aloud for screen reader users. And the image, which is purely decorative, we have to delete that text because decorative images, their alt text has to be empty. Yeah, go. You have to go through this list and you should add all the alt text that you get from the publisher. Yeah. And now you see that the alt text have been changed here. You have to do another thing about the image, which is purely decorative. You should add a role presentation in the button, because then screen readers will skip reading this image aloud. So this is role is area of code that screen readers will read. Yeah, that was just some edits, and it was a bit quick. So let's wrap it up with a good old EPUBCheck validation, shall we? It can be done from within Sigil as well. Luckily, no problems found. And always remember to save. Okay. So this, when you have made edits, you should always check your files with EPUBCheck, then run Ace and check your metadata. And also check, we have another video about this. And then you should open your files and check it in different readers. I have shown some examples to the right with Thorium, Apple Books, Adobe Digital Edition, Colibrio Reader, and Bookshelf. Because you should see how your text look in sepia mode and night mode. Yeah. These are some of the plugins I have on my computer at the moment. I have highlighted Access-Aide in the bottom here. These can be found on Mobileread. We will include the links in the webinars link. And the other link plugins I have some for converting EPUB2 files to EPUB3. I have some that takes a footnote and automatically tag a list of footnotes. And I have some that checks hyperlinks or create a page list for me if there are page markers from the authoring tools. Yeah, that was it. Over.
Well, that was a lot, Marianne. You crammed a
Yeah, and
lot
it was
in there.
quick. I'm sorry.
So just fantastic stuff. I mean, I use Sigil many days and I learned something with that. So thank you so much for that. And thank you, Amit. So in conclusion then, so what we've tried to do in this session is to kind of show some very different workflows for producing EPUB and to talk about the accessibility features that are supported in those. We've talked about using InDesign, and Amit explained that if you're already an InDesign shop, then by following good practice and some extra steps, you can export Accessible EPUB. And if you want to do less around digging into scripts and doing some post fixing, then you could look to taking a look at the circular flow tool. Then we looked at using some online services, which are built specifically for producing publications in an online and often collaborative setting. And in fact, both of the tools that we looked at have kind of oriented more towards the production of textbooks and open education resources, but they're great for self-publishing authors too. And I think we were pretty pleased with the kind of accessibility features, the attention to detail that those folk have made as they've developed those services. They come at a cost, so you might be interested in free options, and you can produce Accessible EPUB directly from your word processor. So we looked at the use of Google Docs, of Pages, and of Microsoft Word there too. So I hope in those different production workflows, we showed you some ways of getting to pretty good EPUB. And then we had that wonderful session for Marianne digging into using both commercial but demonstrations in the free tool from Sigil with some very specific and helpful practical examples of how to add that kind of accessibility final polish. So as we mentioned before, lots of the links through to scripts and tools for you to download, plugins to get for Sigil and so on, they're all included in that resource that you can grab. It's an HTML page at daisy.org/WR. And at this point, I guess we hand back to Dawn to see how we're doing in terms of Q&A.
Sure, I have a handful of questions. Amit, we can start with you if you are if your audio is working well. You indicated that metadata in InDesign can be an issue. How can we add more metadata to the EPUB export?
Okay, so while exporting, InDesign provides a dialog box where there are few fields can be filled in, but still there are few metadata information, for example, like copyright status or notice or author titles are missing. So there's another option within the file menu, which is called file info. So this dialog box gives a lot more options to define metadata. So that is where we can define most of the metadata within InDesign document.
Great, thank you. Richard, this one is for you. Did you have the chance to test Bookalope and compare that to Pressbooks or Heterus?
I haven't. It's next on my list, actually. It does take a little bit of time to evaluate these things, and I have a test title and also a whole book that I'm producing at the moment. So no, I actually did look at another online service, but frankly, the results from that one weren't so good. But I hear good things about Bookalope, and I'm looking forward to trying that too. I don't know if Ted has experience of that. If there are comments about it, I'd like to hear more. There will, as I mentioned, there are quite a few of these different online solutions. So I think over time we'll be exploring more and more of them, and we'll also be sending what I hope will be helpful feedback to the developers about what we found. And if there are some features that we haven't surfaced, then it would be good to kind of do an additional write-up about them.
Thank you. Marianne, this one is for you. What tool would you use if you have an existing EPUB 2 and want to make it into an accessible EPUB 3 with minimal effort?
Yes, sure. I am a big fan of Sigil, so I would use Sigil and import a plugin called EPUB3 Editor, which converts valid EPUB 2 files to EPUB 3.
All right, thank you. So let's see. Marian, you mentioned the Sigil user guide. If one wants to create an ebook in Sigil, can you point them to some useful resources to get them started?
Sure. There's a very useful guide, a tutorial on Mobileread. It's called Pablo's Quick and Dirty EPUB tutorial. It explains basic HTML and CSS. You need no knowledge beforehand, and you can start editing or creating EPUBs with Sigil right away. There's also tutorials on YouTube, for example, Stephen Orthram, I believe he's called. We can put the links in the video. Yeah.
All right. I personally have a question. And this is for, I suppose, Amit or Richard. Is there any word or what's the temperature over at Adobe for being able to create an accessible EPUB from InDesign without plugins? Are they working towards that, or is that just something not on the radar?
Well, yeah, go ahead, Amit. I'd be interested in your answer on this.
All right. So what we need to do is to create an accessible EPUB is that we have to follow some basic rules, which we generally should follow. For example, when I was talking about paragraph styles and character styles, and then mapping them to correct HTML tags. So that is one of the good way of enabling the structure of the content within EPUB file. So that's not all the features which we do. So basically, so if we follow the basic building block of creating ebook, which doesn't have to be done only for accessibility, but in general as well to produce a good EPUB, it automatically becomes accessible. So there are very less options. We need plugins for that. However, it is sometimes get tricky to access features within InDesign, or maybe these are complicated to produce an ebook. So in that way, we sometimes need plugins to make the process easier. For example, Greenlight from Circular Software. It gives a very handy options to define some of the features like table of contents. So where you can enter the table of contents within a table rather than going into TOC styles and creating a whole new TOC style to export TOC. So, and in Circular Software plugin, you can simply type in within the table. So, yeah.
Well, Amit, thank you for that. So I'm not a publisher, I'm not an ebook engineer, and I'm not a kind of dedicated InDesign user. So all of those kind of caveats in place. I do speak a lot with folk who do use InDesign and people who receive files that have been produced in InDesign. And it is possible, of course, to produce accessible EPUB from InDesign. But what people say is there's so much kind of education that has to be done in order for people to really work the gears of InDesign in order to get the good accessible EPUB out. And there are some features that are just not supported in there, such as page list and some of the metadata support. And there's a bit of a feeling that maybe Adobe could pay more attention to this. So I know that people have asked Adobe to look at the accessible EPUB export from InDesign for some time. And what Adobe say is we respond to what customers ask us about. So basically, if you're an InDesign customer, then mention it to Adobe, put it on there. They have a forum called User Voice, I think, where you can make these sorts of requests. So I think the thing is, make it easier for InDesign users, add in some of the features that are missing at the moment and rely on third-party tools, and kind of demonstrate that this is important. That would be the request to Adobe. Do you think that's fair, Amit?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Amit, Marianne, and Richard. Unfortunately, we are approaching the end of our time for today. Once again, thank you to our wonderful panel for sharing their time and expertise with us all. Just before we close, I want to share details of some great webinars DAISY will be bringing to you in the coming weeks. So in 2 weeks, on December 1st, we return to the topic of the EU Accessibility Act, legislation which is positioned to change the way material is published, sold, and consumed within Europe. But that will also have implications globally. On December 15th, we have a special webinar where you decide the content. The Ask the Accessibility Experts webinar is dedicated to answering your questions and addressing the hot topics and challenges we all face related to accessible publishing and reading. If you have a question or topic you'd like addressed, please send it to webinars@daisy.org. We hope you'll join us again soon. In the meantime, thank you for your time. Stay safe and well, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care and goodbye.